So, my journey has started a long time ago too, because I come from the corporate world. I used to work for L'Oréal for 11 years. I work in marketing for 20 years. And after that corporate life, I decided to move to entrepreneurship and to combine my passion, which was music, with to combine my passion with this expertise. I worked for Live Nation on the Afropunk Festival, and then I launched my own agency. So I would say that talking about France is very different. Brands are really more focused on digital. So I started more with product placement on music videos. And since a few years now, brands really want to have more complete partnership, if I can say it like this. So they're looking for the full package, 360 campaigns with social media, with maybe TV ads. They're really more focused on digital. So I can talk about the last campaign that I did. Okay. So yes, it was with Ayana Kamura because well, I think everyone know her. She's African too, and she was launching. She was releasing her album. So we worked on a campaign which was really combining social media, influence, and an event, and where you know we really relied on a fan base, and they were able, you know, to how can I say this? We partner with a brand called Vestiaire Collective, which is international. It's a luxury marketplace, and she offered the outfit of a music video, so that, you know, the fan base could try either to win one of her outfits, either to win a place to come to her release party.
Fantastic, thank you. Appreciate it much. All right, little technical difficulty there. Okay, so now that we've got an understanding of where you guys have come from, how difficult is it to break into working with brands? You had mentioned that you'd studied and you'd been able to sort of accumulate your qualifications. You had mentioned that you had lots of hands-on experience coming into the branding world through events and things like that. Is it possible to break into working with brands within the music industry without a certain level of education? Or is this really integral at this point in time, especially considering where digital marketing is going and the experience of influencer marketing coming to the fore, especially in Africa?
I think with the digital landscape, is everyone safe? Okay, that was quite an interesting. Is that my mic? Hello? Okay. So I think the digital landscape has actually helped out quite a lot. You don't necessarily have to be an academic to break. Right, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm an academic in this media and communication space, but I think when it comes to branding, it's about building a name or an image for yourself, right? Or whatever the product service is. And if you're consistent with whatever it is that you're doing, most corporates or the private sector will probably want what you have. So I think the online presence with key opinion leaders actually breaks that sort of traditional channels, in my opinion, because if you're working hard with, let's say, gigging as an artist and then you're profiling yourself online, most brands or marketing CMOs, chief marketing officers, will probably identify you. So you might not need to go to school for that, but I would definitely encourage the knowledge base and read into it and see how you can obviously develop your craft. Yeah.
Little musical chairs happening here. Maybe you can hold it to this one. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of branding itself. What is your understanding of what a brand is? Because I think once upon a time, people believed that there was a product that you had to sort of make stand out and then sell, right? And then a few years after that, the internet came along and changed people's ability to interact with brands and with marketing. And then suddenly people started referring to themselves as personal brands. And then suddenly something like TikTok comes along, and this pristine, very sort of clean understanding of how you present yourself and how you brand yourself on the internet changed. You didn't have to have a full face of makeup or a perfect body or a this or a that or a big following. You had to be more authentic. So with this sort of arc coming into play in terms of how branding has evolved, what is your understanding of what a good brand is? How does it work? What is it sort of, what's the structure of a good brand in your opinion and in your part of the world? Because I believe also that in each of your sort of different fields and different parts of the world, these things can differ quite greatly. Teresha, I'll start with you.
It's a fine question. You're on fire today. I think a brand for me is something that you reveal. It's who you are. It's what you are when you walk into a room and how you make that room feel like as well. And all of these different channels, whether it's TV, radio, posters, and now digital, we keep on revealing our brand day by day. And we just have different touch points and opportunities to reveal what those brands are. And how I walk into the room, how I show up like, what I choose to wear or dress like, those are all parts of my brand identity. Or when I go to a particular festival, the ethos of that festival, how it makes the crowd feel, the safety of that festival is part of what is built around that brand. When you're a singer-songwriter, what do you make that room feel like? What are the colors that you're building around it? It's all what you're building around as a brand and what you're choosing to put out to the world and showcase yourself as well. And what's amazing and what has evolved is let's show biz about it. That's where the authenticity and that kind of language starts coming in, because we've got so many channels at the moment to show up in different ways and showcase ourselves every single day, whether it's TikTok, different social media platforms as well. And that's what most people want to see, and that's what attracts people to brands as well. Because I'm not putting up a show about myself, and you can choose to dial it up or dial it down. And coming back to Kush's point in the education part of knowing about brands, I didn't study branding or marketing, but it was more of a passion until I got into advertising. And I worked at Ogilvy, I worked in an advertising agency, and I went to start up experiential units because the brands realized that they need to find ways of connecting with culture, but they've got no sense of how to do that as well. And they build experiential units and know-how and knowledge within that. And when I arrived in advertising, it was branding and marketing and designers, but they had no idea of how to connect with culture. Where studios today, the designers are fans. They're fans of music. They're friends of musicians. So the intellect and the soft touches and the relationships of what an artist is like and what they would like, what they would go for, has completely changed in most studios, in agencies, even on the brand side as well, where the CMO is a fan. So they're not just trying to partner with a big musician, they're first partnering with that human that has got a sense of influence and moves in a particular way as well. So there's been a big software upgrade, for lack of a better word, within the studios and the strategies that are built for artists, for events, that are not just cookie cutter shaped, that because this works in sports or this works in this way, we've done it in this particular way. So everything is tailored today as well to various genres, to various kind of artists, and in many different ways, which is very exciting as well. And brands are also picking to pick a lane and identify with that particular lane. Like when working with a Jägermeister, they picked one genre to run with for the past 8 years. And now that genre is paying off because when no one was banking on amapiano, they did. And it wasn't the most organized industry. Some of the artists didn't have managers. They are showing up at events late. But it was part of developing that scene. And same with hip-hop, what Castlelight has done, or Hennessy over the many years. It wasn't the most organized scene, but the energy and the influence that that particular genre comes with, that's what they banked on as well. And that's what they invested in, and it's showing off globally, and they can reap the rewards of that kind of relationship today.
Fantastic. Sonia, what about you? What's your perspective on that?
Oh, well, what I I don't know. Yes, for brands now, the issue is really to show, you know, their mission, because they're all targeting the Gen Z, you know, the youth, and these youth, you know, they're really challenging them about, you know, what brands do, for example, for climate change, what brands do on all and so, you know, for them it's difficult to really find a way to showcase it in their communication. This is what I see. That's why they need to partner with artists, but also not the artists want to partner with this brand sometimes. So this is the challenge for me.
Hello? Yes, okay, great, we're back. All right, so with the understanding of what brands are, creating an experience and sort of rewriting narratives, Africa has its own narratives written by the rest of the world all the time. And so Africa as a brand and the countries within all have different ways of communicating. So I suppose maybe my question to you would be, Kush, what has been your experience of, I'm sure you've talked about rebranding Zimbabwe. What has been your experience of Zimbabwe's sort of way of walking in the world, how people are experiencing the idea of Zimbabwe and Zimbabwean music, and how can we kind of make It's Giving Zimbabwe a good thing?
I like that. Tough question. Zimbabwe's going through a transition, I think. We've had a bit of a bumpy road from being the breadbasket of Africa and all of our economical, I guess, issues. I try to stay away from politics. However, it's been a bit of a difficult time. But, you know, through music, through arts and culture, you can actually contribute to a country's brand. So through the Zimbabwe Music Awards, you know, this is a very good platform as well to be showcasing the best of our talent. And, you know, we've got Feli Nandi, who is an absolutely amazing artist, and I really hope everyone's going to watch her performance tomorrow. She's very passionate and dedicated to her craft, and you know, that is part of branding Zimbabwe. I'm here branding Zimbabwe as well. You know, we're very passionate, hardworking people, and I think through the corporate space, the contribution to, I'll speak to the cultural sector, it's been a journey because we have actually had economical challenges. But there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. I think through conversations yesterday, we were talking about, you know, the financial markets and how, you know, the banks are opening up to transactions. You know, it's not complicated to be transacting in Zimbabwe. Remittances contribute to a huge part of the revenue in Southern Africa. Speaking truth to brands like Mukuru, for example, Zimbabweans are across Africa and they send a lot of money back home. And the diaspora market contributes significantly to our GDP in Zimbabwe. I can't remember the exact figures, but that alone, for me, requires institutions and various collaborations that open up Zimbabwe. So music in Africa, for example, is a platform that should definitely promote other African countries. And I think for Zimbabwe, we've just got to be consistent. For those that are Zimbabwean here, it's nice to see you and connect with you in Tanzania and East Africa. And you know, that's what we're here for. So we've just got to be consistent. A lot of Zimbabweans should go back and come back home. I mean, I've been there for 12 years now, and I think we need quite a lot of our Zimbabweans to contribute back home, and that's how we can actually contribute to the development and branding.
Fantastic, thank you very much. All right, Teresho, you spoke about Amapiano and Jägermeister taking the genre to the rest of the world bit by bit over time. South Africa also has its own reputation right now, especially when it comes to music. How has this changed over time, and how has the positioning of South Africa in the eyes of the world changed with regards to music and events, with brands like Jägermeister coming to support these kinds of industries?
I think for South Africa, it's probably the most exciting time in music in any room at the moment as well. Whether it's
Anyway,
South Africa, you show up. It's part of the brand. It's part of the brand.
we bounce back, it's fine.
It's a show.
That's right.
So I think it's the most exciting time in music. I found that we've never exported so many artists in any time from South Africa ever before, which is super exciting. So when you're seeing 18-year-olds coming in and out of the country at the airports, going to play piano in Amsterdam or Belgium or in Lagos, and young South Africans being willing to take on the continent as well and make connections and also be in studios with other producers, it's opened up a lot. We're learning and we're growing as well. There's a lot of different challenges that are happening, but what's the most exciting thing, which forms part of our brand, is we find a way. South Africans always find a way as well. Whether you're leaning, you don't have to always lean on a brand or the government or whatever the case is. And we might not always show up as the best product, but show up, we will show up. And that for me is the spirit that Amapiano has kind of captured as well. So that is part of what is currently happening in SA. And the brands that kind of get the sense of that spirit and that fire that is currently happening are the ones that are going to win in the next 3 years or 5 years. Jägermeister is just one example of those kind of brands as well that are willing to walk it's not the most glamorous road because you're building it. You're building the management teams, you're building the events, you're building everything that's happening, you're building the tour circuits and being able to respond to a big agent overseas or being able to connect and travel around the continent. There's a lot of challenges along the way to make all of those things happen as well. But it's part of the journey of us making those kind of connections and us building those brands. That's why platforms like Music in Africa and ACCESS are so key for us to just show up for each other and make these connections and just have a family meeting like this as a continent to speak about learnings, what's happening in Zim, what is brand Zim, how do we help when we're coming up, and when I'm sending artists to H-Town, how are they going to show up and what makes sense as well. Same in the diaspora and in France when I want to come and show up, digital and everything else. And also asking ourselves those difficult questions amongst ourselves as well. I think we've gone out a lot. We've been to different conferences, showed up, and we were aspiring to show up in those stages and places, but now we're kind of speaking amongst ourselves and learning amongst ourselves to better our own, at least our own continent, our own scene, and build the touring circuits, and also just having these kind of exchanges as well. So for me, this is a special family meeting, and that's kind of learnings as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really, really important that we get together and do everything that we can to make sure that Africa is eating off of what we have right now. And Sonia, speaking of the diaspora and the sort of dynamic that we have with the rest of the world. What is it like to work with brands like L'Oreal, who are historically very sort of Western, beauty standard focused? You know, I'm sure that in France and in places like Benin and, you know, Tanzania and South Africa all have different ways of approaching how brands should be sculpted. What is it like to operate with brands on that side of the world in comparison to here at home?
Well, you need to adapt because it's really different, yes. The French market, or the perspective of French brands, international brands, and local brands. But what I can say is, if we take the example of L'Oreal, L'Oreal was, okay, I come from L'Oreal, but it's very conservative brands. And now you see that, okay, something has happened since a few months. The group is really focused on artists and really focused on working with what they call urban artists, you know, and to sign these artists and to make global campaigns with these artists. For example, L'Oréal, they have signed Ira Star as global ambassador for Maybelline, so this is unexpected. Ayana Kamura for Lancôme, and a lot of artists like this. So they know that, you know, it's L'Oréal, but it's all the brands like this. They know that they have to work with these artists to really modernize their image. I can take the example too of the last Nike Jordan campaign. Rema is a global ambassador for Nike Jordan. So this is huge because you have Rema along with Diana Taylor and Michael Jordan. So there is something really happening. Why? Because these brands, they know too that, talking about the French market, it's not only the diaspora who's listening to this music. If you go to parties, if you go to festival in France or in Europe, everyone is listening to this music, whether they are black or white. You see, so they know that it's a mainstream music.
Fantastic. And speaking of working with artists and brands directly, can you break down for us, how does one artist approach a brand? How does it work? What is the sort of point of contact? Because sometimes we'll see artists going on to something like Instagram or a Facebook or a TikTok and getting into the DMs and saying, please sponsor my, you know, album launch or whatever the case may be. And that's very sort of direct. Or sometimes they'll show up on a video wearing a certain brand and they don't really have any sort of affiliation with that brand yet, but that's what they're sort of aiming for. Or what are the conditions for a brand wanting to approach an artist? When is the right time of year? You know, what are the sort of environments that need to happen on either side, either for the artist or the brand, to be able to make that connection and say, okay, let's work together?
Okay. So if I talk about what's happening in France, but I think it's in other markets, most artists, they sign, you know, they sign contracts with majors, for example, with how do we say? Yeah, with majors, where there is this branding inside. Yes. So the major is supposed to deal, you know, with all the branding aspects, whether the artist needs product placement or when he's releasing an album, it's the right time for the artist to be in a campaign because you know, there's an actuality. Some artists, they don't want to work like this, so they will come to work, for example, with agencies like mine. Me, I sign artists. I like to sign young talent, even if it's very difficult, because I think that, you know, brands, they have a role too to help artists in their development. So the brands, for my market, the brands are aware of this. Sometimes they can, you know, try to deal directly, like you said, with artists in DMs. But, you know, if majors have a right, they can deal directly. So this is, you know, yeah, to talk very briefly about it, how it works.
Okay. Great. And so, Teresha, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to put up an event and to have brands come in either as sponsors, or what is the structure of that? How does it work, and what is the approach when it comes to building these experiences that eventually turn into movements?
I think there's multiple approaches, and in South Africa at least, it's very hard to do an event for partners like brands and having them involved. So it de-risks the festival to have the right partners involved in your festivals. There are different tiers where, whether it's an alcohol brand or this kind of brand, that we can give value back to them in terms of sales that are going to happen on the festival side immediately. And some are strategic partners like Maybelline. So Maybelline, for instance, is involved, has got a big stage at one of the big festivals in South Africa, where 5-10 years ago, I would have never seen a beauty company with a stage with 6,000 people at a big festival in South Africa. But because the audience has changed and how they consume music, how they are, I've got maybe 6 outfits for a 3-day festival. Because I've got outfit changes, makeup changes throughout the day. So it's a very nice touch point for Maybelline to be able to show up. Because I might be sleeping in the tent and I'm camping, but I'm going to show up with different looks for Instagram and everything else as well. So it's an amazing place for people to try products, to do everything else that is lifestyle orientated, while I'm in an environment that I like and part of my lifestyle as well. And then you start having conversations like that. I'll use Maybelline as an example of how best to show up for that particular consumer, to do packs beforehand. How do you start communicating with that particular consumer beforehand, before they even show up at the festival? And them being part of a festival and presenting a stage at a particular festival, it's just a way of, again, reinsuring and reaffirming the brand, with the relationship with the brand to the fan and the consumer as well. And bringing in, I think she's coming to South Africa next week. She's playing at Rocking the Daisies. She's an ambassador, but they've managed to bring her to South Africa. And that would have never happened if she wasn't a brand partner. It would have been a lot of different money for the promoter to bring her out and all of that. So those are just some of the success stories, or the stories of how we can look at non-traditional ways for brands to show up in the spaces and the businesses that we run as well. And to go back to your question as well, is categorizing the different things that you need at the festival and approaching the right brands that can help with that. And we found that we can go the traditional way of getting the beer brands, alcohol brands, cigarette brands, and then there are some that need a bit more strategy and know-how to sell a culture and a story about the festival too, where we've had to build a smaller team that just focuses on brand and strategy, that sits with the client and the particular brands to design these strategies to help them figure out how best to show up, how best do their agencies show up as well. This will work, this will not work as well. And it's a to and fro, and you need to stand your ground in that as well, because it's also, you can be bulldozed into making decisions that are going to compromise your brand or your festival because they're a bigger entity than you as well. So for the longer run, it's also just standing your ground and protecting the value of what your festival is about, and not just for the quick check as well. And also trying to negotiate longer term contracts, because you are in a festival business or an event business for longer term. You're not doing it just once off. So trying to negotiate 3-year contracts, even if it's incremental, and finding a way to over-deliver. Rather sell yourself short at some point to get into the door if you have to, if you don't have the luxury of being matched up with the brand, just so that you're giving the brand a reason to believe as well, especially when you're starting off. Sometimes doing it for nothing and for infrastructure or whatever the case is, to show them that I can fill up a room for 300 people that are going to be consuming and doing, interacting with your brand. You've already delivered on that promise. Next time someone is going to be willing to invest financially and help you with other ways to grow whatever property, from a show of 300 people, or you're doing a show for 20,000 people. Those kind of relationship dynamics are key as well.
Okay, great. it seems like there are a lot of moving parts in there, so I think we'll go into the nitty-gritty of what contracts should look like in just a second. But I think it will also be interesting to understand when it comes to award shows. This is a very important cultural thing to do within the music industry as well. Award shows really can tell us what's happening within sort of trends, within genres, within countries. How much power does an award show like the ones that we have in Zimbabwe right now, how much power can they keep in terms of creativity when it comes to having sponsors and brands come on board and sort of have their presence at these events?
Okay, so I've been an executive director for the Zimbabwe Music Awards for a year now, so it will be my second year. And I've definitely very quickly learned the power of that, but it's more or less to do with consistency, the professionalism aspect, the transparency, and I think the inclusion of the community, and as well as promoting positively the cultural and the talent. So we've got quite a few awards outlets, some that are government-based, and then others, we've got like the Zimbabwean Hip Hop Awards, the NAMAs as well. So I think there's definitely a huge responsibility in just also protecting the talent and the cultural side. And then I think also the knowledge base. There's a lot of information that I think the creative sector definitely needs to be somewhat supported with information. You know, things like copyright, just contracts alone, royalties. A lot of our, I think overall actually, potentially one could say it's a global issue within the creative space. I don't know, how many artists out there know about their rights? There's one. Okay, two. Okay, yeah, not bad, not bad. And, you know, it's important for an institution like an award ceremony to also consistently, you know, provide that, because the world's changing, isn't it? And, you know, there's a whole aspect, even on the digital space, that actually artists might not know about the distribution. How accessible are, you know, let's say exporting talent, for example. In Zimbabwe, we don't have the luxury of major labels supporting, you know, our music industry. However, an awards ceremony could be an outlet to getting a record deal, for example. An awards ceremony should be able to bridge the gap with the global market. So we've got a huge responsibility in actually protecting as well as exporting our talent. So through that, collaboration is very critical. You know, us connecting, like you said, the whole family aspect. There's no reason why we can't get maybe one of your artists performing at the Zimbabwe Music Awards. What cultural exchange can we harness and develop? We should also come to France. Zimbabwe should be there. Francophone countries, we should all interconnect. And I think for me, it's been positive. The last awards were successful because we've actually managed to export. What we would like to do definitely next is have critical discussions around monetization, around the art space. In Zimbabwe, it's actually difficult to monetize. The digital landscape is a huge part, and the award ceremony should be supporting the arts in order to actually also teach and educate and provide opportunities for that. So, yeah, we've got a big responsibility. From my perspective, it's a long journey ahead. It's my second year, so we're working on just new collaborations. So, hi, sponsors, fellow funders in the room, we're looking for collaboration in Zimbabwe and giving you what you want, because at the end of the day, when it comes to partnerships, it's a two-way stream. So it's not about just asking for sponsorship. What is the value exchange? Do we actually also appreciate what the problem is within that corporate brand? And awards should be able to also give a private sector, public sector, as well as even the NGO space, what it is that we want, what both parties want. And I think critically, what's also important is to evaluate the outcome of it. And then, like what Teresa said earlier, if you've got a partnership that is definitely at least 3 years, the first year of engagement, you should be able to learn and have findings and data from what you achieved and then adjust. I'm going to quote Robert Hoyer. I met him yesterday, and I had to write down one of the things he said, if he's in the room. I saw him earlier. Principles have longevity, methodology changes. And that was quite profound for me, because you know, when you're doing and handling such an institution, you have to have your vision mission that is, you know, stable and steady and consistent. But you can also definitely change your strategy whilst you're actually embarked on that, let's say, 3-year deal. It's not going to work if you've got a short-term deal. And so that's my contribution there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so considering there needs to be time to be able to understand the partnership and to be able to sort of work it out,
Yeah.
what is the general sort of feeling around brands and these long-term sort of plans and goals? Are they, you know, what is the feeling there? Are they committing to those sort of long stretches, or do you find that sometimes there's trepidation sort of halfway through, and how do you deal with something like that?
In Zimbabwe, it's a challenge. We're in a bit of a volatile environment, landscape economically. So 6 months is a long time in Zimbabwe. But things are changing, actually. That was the case. And I think, you know, there are festivals. I can speak about the Jacaranda Music Festival. They've actually managed to successfully engage with a partnership with Stanbic, and it's they've been consistent for 2 years. I think they should be working together next year. Through arrangements like that, it really helps with familiarity. And I'm sure, in fact, I attended the event last year. I was a panelist there, and this year I attended as a consumer. And it was lovely to see the consistency around that. And I think what Walter has managed to do is to somewhat provide a bit more confidence within the corporate landscape. And there are other product event outlets as well that brands are beginning to, I guess, have a bit more, because you've got to have a bit of risk, isn't it? I think the corporate space views the creative industry, I'll speak about Zimbabwe anyway, a little bit more risky. And, you know, we've got the responsibility as event curators to be consistent and professional with our craft. So if there's a contract, you honor it, you have an event on time. Are you going to set your KPIs at the beginning and honor it? So in Zimbabwe, it's a journey, and I mean, I'm excited to experience it, because having been there for just a little bit over a decade, it's been quite. I'd love to write a case study around Zimbabwe, just seeing the journey of it, and I think it's definitely opening up for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what comes out of this. Okay, Teresa, let's go to you. I think you've used Jägermeister as an example when it comes to Amapiano. Let's talk generally about brand alignment when it comes to artists or festivals or events or whatever the case may be on that side, and brands. How do you make sure that these two sides are sort of mutually benefiting, that there's alignment, that there's an authentic way of interacting? Because it seems like a little bit of a random combination when you get a brand like Jägermeister or any alcohol brand and you get an artist that doesn't drink. So how do you sort of connect those and make it work so that it is an authentic experience?
I think that's left to the different parties as well, because brands, commercial businesses, they want to leverage of what they need to deliver on as well. And I think the responsibility then comes to the creator and us as an industry, whether I'm an event owner or an artist, to commit to, am I going to work with an alcohol brand even if I don't drink? Does it still tick the boxes? Or for them, it would probably tick the boxes because of visibility and how big I am. I work with some clients that don't drink, but they work with alcohol brands, for instance. But longevity-wise, is it a space that I want to play in? Is it a high-energy space and the kind of environment that I need to be in? Does it fit in with my brand as well? So sometimes you just need to have those kind of honest conversations from the beginning as well. And our market versus them is very saturated with brand activity. There's multiple events that are happening, and brands know what a quality event and a quality partnership looks like. It's a mature market when it comes to that kind of space, and in terms of the partnerships that you can have with talent, artists, and events. So the pickings are, they've got a lot to choose from as well. And brands are walking away from contracts. They will sign a 3-year contract. If there's lack of delivery or whatever the case is, they're going to pull out of it as well because of lack of delivery. So the onus still remains on us as an industry and as creators to be honoring these contracts and delivering and over-delivering in most cases as well. And also holding the brands accountable in that kind of relationship, because again, 5-10 years ago, it always seemed like it's a one-way stream where as creators or festival owners, we're going to ask, and even if the brand doesn't deliver on this, we're a lot more forgiving, where now it's a lot more dynamic in terms of how we manage that relationship as well. Because I can also cancel the contract as a brand or as an event owner and move to another, which we've done multiple times as well, because it was not serving us anymore in that way, not just because of financial purposes, but the dynamic of the relationship could be causing more harm to our event and our team, even internally as well, in terms of how we work. If the dynamic is not great within the brand partner that you're working with and it's destroying the team or the event in any particular way, sometimes it's even better to just move on and find a different partner that will complement and work with you and walk the road with you in a different way as well.
Okay. So what is the implication of that when something goes wrong or things are not necessarily aligned and there needs to be a separation? How do you manage that negotiation?
I think that is managed from the onset, managing expectations from the jump in terms of what we need to deliver, what the brand needs to deliver, what those KPIs are, and reporting is key. Because reporting and learning is key for the brand and for ourselves if we're going to be walking a 3-year journey or multiple-year journey with each other as well. Because again, strategies will change. Things are changing every single day in our environment as well. The brand teams, the faces on the other side of the table change every 3 months. People have got different ambitions, they move in and move out, and the vision changes. And it usually works when you've got a champion on the brand side that believes in what you are doing or believes in culture or in music. But in 6 months or in a year, that person might not be there. And someone else doesn't really believe in music, for instance, or a particular genre, for instance. But I'm in a 3-year deal with that particular partner. I'm stuck in that kind of environment as well. But now it becomes a grudge where we need to fulfill each other's commitment. But the delivery is different as well. So there's also that risk in partnering with brands where there is no more champion on the other side of the table that believes or sees the vision that someone else signed off before they left and moved on to another company or another brand as well. So there's so many dynamics that are involved in partnering or deciding to work with a particular brand that are not just financial. So, yeah.
Okay, wow. Okay, Sonia, so let's break down a little bit. When we come to a certain agreement and we have to do some paperwork and agree on what's going to be had on both sides, what we'll agree to and what we won't agree to, what do contracts like that look like, especially when it comes from an artist's side? What does an artist need to look for in a contract to make sure that they understand everything that's going on? What are some red flags? What are some green flags? How do you know when you're in a good space and when to sign?
Okay. So the artist needs to look at a lot of things, territories, whether it's a local or a global campaign, the duration, exclusivity, because you know if you are engaged with, for example, Adidas, you can't work with all the competitors of Adidas. So is it worth it? And you're not supposed to for example, on social media, to show that you wear Nike. So this is a lot of things like this that you have to negotiate in your contract. From my point of view, there's a lot of artists, you know, that are very assisted, as I said, by this, by the managers, by the people working with brands. Some of them have their own lawyer to assist them on these aspects.
Okay. Let's go down to the sort of experiential marketing and the digital side of things. How do we measure the success of a brand partnership once we've gone through all the processes?
Okay, so it's for me, okay, question? Yes, because I work mostly on digital. There's a lot of KPIs that you need to define before the campaign with brands, because, you know, sometimes brands, they don't really know they love one artist, they want to work with this artist, but it's important to tell them, what do you want, engagement or visibility, you know? So we have tools that help us define, okay, this is the audience that the artist has in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of localization, countries, and with these KPIs you can, after the campaign, see the results and see, you know, if the objectives have been reached.
What kind of KPIs would you say would be good for an independent artist to look at? And what kind of tools would an artist who doesn't necessarily have access to a major label or an agency be able to use for themselves if they want to look at?
Well, if we talk about Instagram, everyone, you know, has his own figure, so can know, okay, which country, you know, in which country they have the biggest audience, which age are the audience, and things like this. So everyone has access to these tools.
And this usually comes through things like social media, websites. So, how would an artist want to sort of house all of that information if they didn't really understand exactly how to pinpoint all these things?
This is why artists, they need to work with talent agencies, because they are artists. You see, they need to focus on their music and, you know, to have some people to have, like they have managers, they have producers. For me, it's important for an artist to have someone who is really, you know, working on this so that he can focus on his music.
Right, it's a lot. It's a lot of overwhelming.
Yeah, because you can do everything now. Artists, they need to run their social media. They need to think about, okay, what image do I? Because with your image, you show a lot of things, and brand understand that, okay, this one, it has luxury positioning. This one is a little bit more popular. So the artist with the luxury positioning, you can't work with, for example, I don't know, a bank or bet. We say bet? No? Okay. So up to this, you know, the artist needs to work with someone because he can't do everything himself.
True. Okay. So let's look at the perfect recipe. 5 minutes. The perfect recipe for a good brand partnership before we go to the Q&A. What is the perfect recipe for a good partnership? Let's start with you, Teresha, and then we'll go down the line.
I think respect. Respect would be, it comes in different forms and shapes, whether it's with an artist or an event partner as well, and clear outcomes from the get-go. Like you mentioned, the KPIs of what are the key deliverables that I need to deliver from a brand point of view or from an artist point of view, an event point of view. Also challenging each other in terms of what are your ambitions. Like we can deliver on what is on the table, but I find that when magic happens is when both sides are ambitious or put an ambition at least beyond what is actually on the table. For the brand, there's a bit of an ambition, and for the events, there's a bit of an ambition, because then you're working towards something else where you always want to create more and add value to your audiences and your consumers on both sides as well. And also the kind of engagement, what is required, is it a visibility or is it engagement? And what's the sentiment that lands because of this partnership? Because the sentiment is also key. When those two brands are married together, what does the customer feel like or the fan feel like as well? So part of all of those things are things that you need to define from the onset as well, so that it's not a kick and hope or a lucky packets to kind of see what will happen in the future. Because I need to be in this big festival, or I want to work with this particular artist. It might be horrendous working with that particular artist because they're not delivering on what they need to do, or it's not authentic. It doesn't feel real to their audiences. And it goes back to us being a lot more vulnerable with how we show up and showing our brands as individuals or as events as well. As everything is opened in the world at the moment as well, and we're showing that, and you can't fool fans, you can't fool consumers anymore as well. And I'm not going to suddenly start using Maybelline because you are at my festival. It's how are you involved in my everyday life, and how do you show up in key points of my life, in my celebratory moments, or when I'm gathering with my friends, or when I'm celebrating, or I'm at a festival. That's how you build those relationships, and those are the key magic moments until I'm showing up at a big festival and I've got a stage with a big international artist. So I think painting that picture and outlining journeys like that is key.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I think just to add value to what you're saying, I think it's probably about serving an authentic conversation. You know, we're living in a world where there's a lot of real time, everything is immediate, and for, you know, we've spoken quite a lot about consistency. So if there's authenticity in all that we do, I think there's definitely longevity. If there's that alignment between the brands, consumers, fans are more, I think, likely to buy into whatever it is that you're doing. And I think when it comes to a brand, you believe in it. So if you're aligned with your principles and you're competent in terms of executing whatever it is that you're doing, and you're sharing an authentic story, I think that definitely brings longevity. Yeah.
Okay. I think let's go to the audience and see if anybody has something to say. Ooh, it's bright up here. Any questions? We've got one here in front. Hello.
Hi everyone, thank you for your contribution and intervention. So I have a question more on the languages side, like in artist branding. Are there like linguistic strategies that are used for the branding? Because in the past few years it was actually using English because it is an international language. But we are saying that trying to back to the roots and back to the local language and using native languages to actually sell the artists and use it in the branding. So do you think there is actually a system, a strategy, a linguistic strategy to promote the branding of the artists?
Yeah, I think definitely language is obviously critical in terms of culture and ownership, heritage. A lot of the work that we do in Zimbabwe, definitely we use vernacular, local vernacular, but sometimes there are challenges, interpretation of certain words. There's huge sometimes backlash if something is, you know, spelt wrong or something like that. But in Zimbabwe, Shona and Ndebele are the main, I guess, languages, and that is embraced in Zimbabwe, and I think it is positive. A lot of the most successful artists in Zimbabwe do have their songs in Shona or Ndebele, and for us that's very important because when you're exporting that talent, it's communicating part of our heritage. And something about music is amazing. I mean, I'm not from Nigeria, but I know some of Davido's lyrics. So, you know, I don't know what he says all the time, but at least I know that is from Nigeria. So, yeah, I think that's something.
I think that's a really good question. I don't know if any of you guys remember the campaign that Spotify had when they came to expand in Africa, when they had the little pop-up and they were using sort of different words from different cultures?
Yeah.
It didn't last very long because apparently it didn't land quite well. So this is a very interesting question. And I think I'd like to get into it a little bit more with the panelists. How do you speak to a nation or different sort of demographics, I suppose, in their own languages without it sort of coming across as trying too hard to please this market? How would you have done it maybe differently if you could?
I think language plays a very big role in how you show up as a brand as well, because it brings you closer as well. And I can sit in Joburg and create a campaign, a Spotify campaign, Pan-African, but I'm not there. And people have never experienced me greeting them in their language. So it won't last, it won't land.
Attention! Your potential customers are watching this video. Don't miss out on the opportunity to reach them. Advertise your business alongside their favorite content and convert them into loyal customers. Contact us now at info@snstz.com or WhatsApp 0659250389 to amplify your brand to the SNS family.